So I can send this email.
I want to thank you all for coming out. This is the first night of winter for me because we're supposed to have our first snow tomorrow. So usually by now I miss about 3 or 4 nights of sleep, getting up early in the morning and checking. I have gone out and checked my deck a couple of times in the last couple of weeks to see if there's much snow on it. But I'm glad you're all here tonight. This is an important topic that we're talking about. I'm Brad Bernard, the superintendent of the district, and we have been working to put together a program for you that I think is both informative, presenting some of the things that we're doing, and also give you an opportunity to ask some questions and find out some things that you can do in the process to help with this issue. One of the things that we really understand in schools is that we welcome all children into our schools. And when we welcome all children into our schools, we get children that have different backgrounds, different experiences. There are different places in their lives socially, academically, emotionally, and that's no more true than in the middle school. We see that those changes and life growth that happens so much at the middle school age, that it's so important for us to be able to work with students in a variety of levels that they're at in their lives. At the same time, those students represent our community and our world. The same problems that we have out in our world come into our schools. The same challenges that we have in our communities, we have in our school districts and in our buildings. And so those are things that we work on and we ask your help on. I'm glad you're here tonight. One of the visions that we've put together in the last couple of years in our school district is to promote a culture of safety, respect, and collaboration. Nothing aligns more than that, with that, and the topic we have tonight, and nothing's more important than having you here working with us on that. So thank you for being here. I want to introduce a couple of people in the audience that I appreciate being here. Chief Stair is here from the police department. Thank you. I saw Jeff Anderson come in from our Board of Education. Jan Westrom is here from our Board of Education, so we appreciate them being here as well. We have several people that are presenting tonight. Dave Powers, our school resource officer, will be presenting. Sue Gradavell, the 7th and 8th grade counselor. Carlene Hughes, the 5th and 6th grade counselor. And Scott Kelly, our dean of students. And so thank you for being here. I'm going to turn it over to the middle school principal, Carolyn Clark, for just a few minutes before the program starts. Thank you.
Good evening. We know you are here because you are concerned about bullying and harassment issues. We greatly appreciate you took the time out of your evening to come here and talk about this important event. We're going to do a few things this evening. We're going to go over developmental stages for a typical student day, control versus stress of middle school students. We're also going to talk about what you can do as a parent if you feel that your child is being bullied or harassed. And then at the end of the presentation, we're going to have a question-and-answer session. And we have to remember that individual questions that are specific to an individual student or situation are confidential. And so we may not be able to answer if it's a specific question. But if you have any questions that come up as we're talking, please go ahead and fill those out. And then what I'm going to be doing is walking around with a basket and putting it in there. And then Officer Powers will be going through those questions. We'll be addressing those towards the end of the program. One thing I wanted to start the program with is so you are aware that when your children are in school every day, we read our daily announcements, and every week we have a different group of students from a different advisor or homeroom that reads announcements. And every day your child hears this. Character counts. In keeping with the National Character Counts philosophy and our PBIS program, Boone Middle School promotes and models the pillars of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. While in school or out in the community representing Boone Middle School, we expect that all BMS students will act in a respectful manner and demonstrate all pillars of character. So with that, I'm going to pass the microphone to Mrs. Gradavell. Mrs. Hughes, Carlene Hughes.
Thank you for coming tonight. When I was home for supper, my nice warm fuzzy blanket looked pretty good. So thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Carlene Hughes. I'm one of the middle school counselors, and I work primarily with the 5th and 6th grade students here at the middle school. And when we were planning this, we were thinking, what do we really want parents to know? And we thought maybe we need to start with some developmental traits of these kiddos when they hit 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. They have a lot of different started with some 5th grade traits. I hope 5th grade parents remember back to these days, and really, truly at school they are. They're pretty obedient, they're good-natured, and they're fun. They love to laugh and have a good time. Interests, they're interested in everything. Now is a wonderful time to get a hold of them and let them try some different things, whether they're school activities or community activities. The third one is kind of a concern. Right now they love their TV characters on TV. They're starting to identify with them. So as a parent, just remember please that it's important to know what they're watching and who they're identifying with. Independence is huge. They may be able to be left home alone for longer periods of time, and you may have some that maybe are out doing some child care for neighbors or relatives as long as you're close by. Truthful and dependable, really truly, they are pretty dependable at this age, even though they may not like to do chores and responsibilities at home. The bottom one, they form good personal relationship with teachers and counselors. Also, they've got those good relationships with their coaches and any other type of leader, group leader, or whatever they're involved in. And the 6th graders, the average 6th grader is about 11 years old, and they are moving towards adolescence. And this is where we start to see more changes. They're curious, but yet they're kind of wanting to assert themselves to others. Very social. Love to be social at this age. When I walk down the 6th grade hallway, they're in groups. They're friendship groups. They're laughing. They're having fun. Not so much aware of the adults around them, but very much in tune with their friends. Also, when you get them in the classroom, they're restless and wiggly and talkative. And that's fun. The next few ones that talk with emotions and feelings, the roller coaster is starting. They're up and they're down, and they're up and they're down. And some days they don't know if they're coming or going. When they are in the emotional mode, the emotions trump the knowledge. Whatever you teach as far as how to deal with certain situations, so many times when the emotions hit at this age, they forget about their knowledge base. So keep reinforcing that the best you can. Also at this age, it's not up there, but I see students who start giving their parents every message to stand back, stay away, leave me alone, I don't need your help. But inside, they're really truly saying, come closer and help me, I need your help. And that's a real mixed message when everything they're doing is pushing you away, but inside, remember, they really want you to come close and help them. So those are kind of your traits of your 5th and 6th graders.
Okay, you're fired. And then they hit 7th grade. And I heard a speaker say this once, and it has stuck with me forever. Be careful when you tell your children to act their age, because they probably are. It's just really not what you wanted them to do. A few things that I kind of wanted to focus in on with 7th and 8th graders have to do with personal and group identity. They're really trying to figure out who they are. And that does sometimes come out in the classroom because they need to have a place. They need to figure out who they are. And I thought the quote was really important. Developing a solid sense of self is a painful process. And maybe you remember middle school, junior high, and maybe you've blocked it out. Even the best adjusted adolescents must walk through the fires of self-discovery. And they really are walking through the fires of self-discovery when they hit that 12, 13-year-old age. And I've been at this for 18 years. And I'm still seeing a lot of the same things. We kind of transferred to the middle school concept my 2nd or 3rd year here in Boone, and we did a lot of study about the developmental stages, and we based a lot of our school planning on those stages, and they're still the same. They're the same that they were 17 years ago when we made that transition. This is probably the most important one at the 7th and 8th grade. Where do I fit in? What you valued as a family They just picked up your values, and they followed that for a long time. Now they kind of start to question those, and the most important thing is being a part of a peer group. And some of you may have had a conversation with your child. Why do you keep going back to those friends? They don't treat you very well. Well, guess what? Because they want to be a part of a group. So forming that satisfying peer group may be the hub of the developmental wheel for adolescents. And a lot of times the bullying and harassment comes from the exclusion maybe of kids who really want to be a part of one of those groups. Developing their personal value system, I alluded to a little bit, I got ahead of myself. They may start to question the values that you have established, which may cause a little bit of friction in your home. Maybe even a little panic on your part because they're trying out some new things. And then the black and white of right and wrong begin to take on shades of gray as moral development evolves. They used to believe everything you told them, and at different times in their lives they start questioning that. And as a parent, that's pretty scary. This is the newest thing I've had to deal with in the 18 years, probably in the last 3 years. These young adolescents are immersed in technology, some more than others. And it goes well younger than adolescents. My 6-year-old can do a lot more things with a computer than I can, and that's pretty scary. They are constantly connected to each other via their cell phones and their social networks. They're very often distracted in school. We do have a cell phone policy. It's very hard to enforce because they are so good at what they do. They can have their hands in their pocket and be texting their friend right next to them in the classroom or in another classroom, and as a teacher facing 30 students teaching the math lesson, we don't always know that that's going on. They may ask to go to the restroom, and then they go in and do some texting. Very, very hard to patrol. Probably like the one lone highway patrolman who has to catch every speeder on Interstate 35. You don't get them all, and it's very difficult. It's a lot easier to include a lot more people in the harassing issue when you can do it via texting or via social networks. When I started, kids would come in and say, okay, at that time, Miss Martine, I'm having trouble with so-and-so, they called me a name, whatever. We'd bring them in, we'd talk about it. Usually it was a misunderstanding or he said, she said, they. Sometimes it might involve a call home, but lots of times it was those two people having a conflict, we worked it out, it was over. Now by the time an adult is informed, they've already told 50 people on their cell phone that so-and-so said this about them. And so it's not conflict between individuals anymore, it's conflict among groups of individuals. And I would have to say that's been our biggest challenge. A lot of times the social networking that's going on Friday night, Saturday, that's what they come in and talk about on Monday morning. Not, did you finish the book for reading class, or did you get your civics project done? Did you see what so-and-so posted on Facebook or whatever? And we address those when they are brought up in school because they're affecting what's going on with the kids. So that would be the biggest change and probably the biggest challenge that I see over the 18 years in my role. Just a little bit of summary with both what Mrs. Hughes and I said. Very moody at this age. Oftentimes people would say, well, how did you do that, Mrs. Gradeville? And I said, well, when they came in before lunch, I said, you know what, I'll catch you after lunch. And when they came back, everything was fine. Really, really good counseling. Just they'll fix it if you give them a little bit of time. As we mentioned, less attention shown to parents, trying out a little more with their friends. Carlene, Mrs. Hughes mentioned tendency to return to childish behavior during times of stress. I don't think that's only true of adolescents. I think maybe some of us regress a little bit when we get in the moment and we aren't quite sure what to do. More influence from their peer group than their family. Mostly interested in the present and the near future. And those of you who have 8th graders, and Mrs. Gradeville makes them try to plan their 4 years of high school and beyond, and they don't even know what they're going to do after school, and we all get frustrated with that because they really aren't all forward-thinking like we would like them to be. Limit testing the rules, and worrying about being normal when there really isn't a normal right now at this stage. And this is what we would like you to think about. I was telling my husband about this one day, and he's like, wow, have you ever told people that? And I said, well, I'll get my book written. But this is what our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders do every day. between 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock. Envision this as an adult at work. 8 different meetings. You have to go to 8 different meetings. Each meeting requires a different set of materials. You only have 3 minutes in between those meetings to go to the bathroom, call your spouse, make your grocery list, do whatever you need to do. You have to get to your next meeting while 150 other people are also trying to get to their next meeting. And that's what they do every single day. And sometimes we as adults forget when they come into our room and they've got their math book instead of their geography book. It's like, how can you have brought your math book to geography class? Think about it. And maybe as parents you think, how could you not have your science notebook when you went to science and you took your social studies notebook instead? Sorry, Mom, sorry, Dad, but this is what I'm doing every day. And sometimes we have to step back as adults and say, wow, those are some pretty high expectations. This happens when these things are going on. People hurry, people bump into each other, and for some people that's no big deal. I like to be out the halls with the kids. Sometimes I just stand at a crossroads, but other times I like to just walk right in among them. And because I don't stand above all of them, or very few of them, they'll run right into me and have no idea. And most of them will say, oh, Miss Granville, I'm sorry. They realize they did something. For other kids, if they're bumped into by another student, their reaction is very defensive. They think it was intentional. Was it? Maybe. But sometimes the reaction is what determines what happens next. Kids drop their books, drop their pencils, whatever. One kid will kick them down the hall, next kid will come by and help them pick it up. That's just the nature of the beast. People get frustrated, sometimes lash out at each other, and just like us, when stress goes up, control goes down. We need to give them a little bit of control, and we've shared this with our staff as well. At school and at home, provide the kids with choices when it's possible. Obviously, there are things I know in your home as in mine that are just non-negotiable, but maybe some choice will give them a little more feeling of control, even if you don't want them to have it. Provide them with responsibilities, which, again, Mrs. Hughes mentioned, they're going to tell you they don't really want, and yet it's something they can have control over. Clear expectations and structure. And the last one, again, something we're trying to visit more as teachers, teach them age-appropriate skills. But we can't expect them to know how to cope with something that's never happened to them before unless we teach them how to cope with that. I was reading a book and doing a book study on teaching with poverty in mind, and one of the examples that the author gave was every Monday morning, the teacher just throws something out. This is what happened to me over the weekend. What would you guys do? Give them 1 minute. 1 minute of problem-solving skills. Because if they don't get to practice it, and then it happens to them, there's that stress. So teaching kids coping skills as those things come up is so, so important. Okay, what are we doing at school? I'm going to turn it back over to Mrs. Hughes to talk about what they're doing in guidance.
Currently, right now, 5th and 6th grade have guidance class with me. It's kind of feast or famine. Currently, 5th grade I have two 40-minute sessions, basically twice on the 6-day rotation with them. With the 6th grade, I get them for 40 minutes once a month. So this year, we've really worked hard and went back with our bullying and said, we need to have a definition that we all know about, and we've all dissected so we know what all the vocabulary words mean in that. And this year, the definition we used is at the bottom, where bullying is intentionally aggressive behavior made up of repeated harmful acts that include an imbalance of power, and it is hurtful to the target or the victim. First of all, we use target instead of victim. The target sounds like you're stronger, you have more choices, you're more in charge with yourself, whereas victim sometimes sounds a little bit pitiful. And so they both mean the same thing, the kids know they do, but right now we're using target. We went through this with both 5th and 6th grade. We talked about intentionally. Intentionally we know is on purpose. We listed aggressive behaviors, whether they were physical or emotional type behaviors. Repeated means they were done several times, not just one time, maybe not two, but for true bullying, They're repeated acts. The imbalance of power. We talked a lot. They had fun with that. They know the imbalance of power can be age, where the bully and his supporting crew may be older than the younger ones. Oftentimes, we know bullies never pick on anybody older than they are. Bullying can also be a group mentality, where the bully maybe has his supporting crew or her supporting crew, and they go off and they pick on younger kids too. So we've really talked about that imbalance of power and how hurtful it is, whether it's emotional hurt or physical hurt. Let's see, also in our different lessons, besides discussing the definition for bullying, we worked really hard on bullying behaviors. That's intimidation, name-calling, fighting, insulting, or damaging or destroying other people's property. We know the causes of bullying. The causes of bullying are usually very sensitive issues. They can be appearance, race, or social status. We talked about places where bullying occurs. We know it can happen about anywhere, usually where there isn't the supervision that that one-on-one supervision. We talked about in another lesson about identifying the difference between physical and emotional bullying. The kids know hitting, tripping, and touching are, of course, the physical bullying. The ignoring, the name-calling, the intimidating, and the exclusion are the emotional. We reinforce that telling on a bully is not tattling. It is reporting. You can ignore the bully, but you can't ignore the bullying. And so you need to tell that trusted adult about what's going on. And we talked about who those trusted adults are. We recognize the difference between bullying and teasing. So many times I've been working with somebody who's really feeling down. They're reporting bullying behaviors. When we talk to the other students say, I was just teasing. So we've talked a lot about the difference between bullying and teasing. Bullying is if what is done or said is hurtful, that's bullying. And bullying usually doesn't stop without adult help. Teasing is if what we say or how we say the act is done in a friendly, laughing manner, and it is not hurtful, then it is teasing. I believe some of you may have picked up a handout that's yellow tonight. That is one of the handouts that the 5th graders received. It talks a lot about bullying situations and strategies for them. One of the hardest things we talked about is if you're faced with a bully, try not to cry. And they looked at me and they said, that's really hard. And I said, you bet it is. But no matter what you do, the bully just loves to make people cry. So you may cry on the way home when you get away from them, but do your best not to try to cry in front of them. We all know that that's a real hard thing to do, though. During guidance classes, we use literature. I brought just a couple of books that I want to share with you that open up to really good discussion in families. When I have guidance and we're using literature, I'm not looking at comprehension or reading level. The first one is Crickling. Crickling is an excellent example of how Crickling is bullied by others. He has a crooked wing. And the other ones who are larger than he is bully him. He therefore turns into a bully himself and goes on and bullies the army ants. And the army ants then in turn group together and come back and work with Crickling. Awesome book. And I think this book, what, Martha, probably 3rd grade insect unit, is probably when they were first introduced to it, but it's an awesome book. The other one that I really like is Hey Little Ant. Hey Little Ant, we talk a lot about there's going to be people who get under your skin all the time. And so what can you do? And it starts out in the book where the big kid is going to squish the ant. And the ant pleads his case throughout the story. And at the very end, the ant says, if I were you and you were me, what would you do? And we never find out what they did. But it's a good one for tolerance and people who do get under our skin. The other one that's really awesome is My Secret Bully. My Secret Bully is about someone who's a good friend, but they're also a bully to that same person. So another really good one. And the other one that emphasizes the bullying versus teasing. I was just kidding. And so those are just 4. I have other ones in my room that I really like, but grab a book and have communication. Wonderful way to start a discussion on that. Currently, Mrs. Gradville and I receive a ton of communication from other school districts on things that they're trying as far as bullying behavior goes. Probably what we said, 1 or 2 a week from other districts in the state of Iowa. So a lot of them are videos now that they're making within their school districts. So I know it's not just a Boone issue. I'm sorry it's here, but it's not just a Boone issue. And once again, it's very clear it's going to take a whole community to help support the anti-bully so we can get it taken care of. There are some people I want to introduce. They're our supporting crew, because we don't just have bullying units in 5th and 6th grade. They start in kindergarten. And we have Linda Downs. And Linda is at Lincoln and Page with kindergarten and 1st grade. We have Pam Miller, who's at Franklin with 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders. They teach bullying too. I don't know, we have Megan Curry, Megan McIntyre, and Kathy Weaver at the high school. And also we have Mark Hanna, who is with us part-time in the district, primarily middle school and high school. He loved us so much he came back after he retired, so we're happy to have him. So, okay.
Before I go on, one of the things I picked up on as Mrs. Hughes was talking is, the teasing. I meant for it to be funny. The hard thing is to remind kids and young people that it's not what you intended, it's what the other person perceived. They didn't think it was funny. They might even have been laughing with you. They really didn't think it was funny. So it's so much about teaching how to read other people's language, nonverbal languages, to affirm that, they were hurt, that it didn't feel good, and then to teach the person who thought they were teasing that you need to be a little more careful, that if it would have been funny for you, it probably wasn't funny for them. So it's a lot of teaching for us. When the kids get to 7th and 8th grade, we don't have regular guidance classes, but our homeroom teachers do a lot of advisory activities related to character counts. Some of the videos that Mrs. Hughes alluded to, those teachers have shown and discussed in their homerooms. Mrs. Growell is our 7th grade reading teacher, and following the class read of the Shadow Club, some students came to her and said, hey, would you meet with us once in a while? We have some ideas that we would like to do, and if you walk around our building, you'll see some posters that the kids have come up with. And individually, they've kind of started reaching out to some kids who they know have been targets, just trying to provide some friendship to them. Both the 6th grade and the 8th grade, we do some grade level retreats where we do a lot of team building activities, try to encourage kids to learn about each other and to appreciate each other's strengths. And then through our PBIS program, we're constantly asking, was that respectful? Was that responsible? Did what you just do show respect? And we just constantly, everything we ask them, how is that respectful? How can you make that be more respectful? And then we try to just help the kids, again, control that stress a little bit, have a little more control in their day. If we find that they're getting stressed out because they can't get their materials to class, that kind of thing, we just try to do some individual planning with them. And then at each grade level, our teachers have a team meeting each day so that if there is a student struggling, they can sit down and work with that student, or myself or Mrs. Hughes can go into the team and share the concerns with them. When we teach kids about how to deal with conflict, and I know that you've probably all had this too, and you share it with your student, if a person is doing something you don't like, the first thing to do is just say, please stop. I really don't like it when you close my locker when I just opened it. I really don't like it when you knock my books out of my hand. Please stop. That's the first thing. If that doesn't do any good, tell an adult. Classroom teacher, guidance counselor, principal, tell an adult at school. Tell your parent at home what's happened. And then if nothing happens after the adult at school has intervened, it's still happening, the parent needs to contact us and say, you know what, I know that my daughter talked to you, and I know that you talked to the other student, but we're hearing it's just not fixed. Can we go to the next level? What can you do as a parent to help them? As I talked about earlier, and Mrs. Hughes talked about, as a parent, accept what is normal and help maybe that student who lashed out at them was just not having a good day. I tell all the kids that come into my office, everybody has a story. Everybody comes into our building in the morning, and you don't know what just happened to them. Maybe they just found out grandma is sick. Maybe they just overheard mom and dad having a conflict. And maybe that one little thing that you said just put them over the edge. So if it isn't kind, don't say it, because you just don't know their story. Ask them questions before assuming that you have the whole story. I think it was a Reader's Digest quip where the kindergarten teacher wrote to the parents, "I'll only believe half of what your child tells me happened at home if you only believe half of what they tell you happened at school." Good message to remember. Help us reinforce our cell phone policy and all of our policies. If you do need to reach your student, we have office phones. We will get them messages. I tell kids, all through life there are going to be laws you don't like, but you don't get to pick them. You just get to decide if I'm going to break that law, there will be a consequence. And I think if they start understanding at this age, there will always be policies and there will always be someone in authority that they just learn to respect that. And so if you can help them and help us, we would appreciate that. Be a partner with us. Give us a call, ask questions, and mostly give your child the confidence to stand up for what's right. I just got a booklet in the mail today that I'm going to order for our students because it's a student book on bullying, and it said that as a student, you have the most power to influence your school culture. Because if you have the courage to stand up for what's right, pretty soon others will too. Students get a lot more courage from each other than they do from us, but they have to know we're going to back them up. But if they stand up to someone, we're going to stand right behind them. And I think Mr. Kelly is up next.
All right, just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, you're writing things down. Mrs. Clark's going to be walking around with the basket as you're thinking of ideas. Feel free to get up and get a drink, grab some cookies as we're going through here. Again, I'm Scott Kelly. I have taught in the district for 14 years. This is my first year within administration. I was born and raised in Boone, grew up here, and had the opportunity to move into this. As I kind of decided why I wanted to get into this, within leadership in the community, and also my kids are involved, like everybody else. I have a daughter here in the middle school in 6th grade, which is a good time for girls, and I just passed that on to my wife. And I have a son in 4th grade who's going to make my hair turn gray. So I see both ends of the spectrum as we deal with kids, and most of the time when we have parents come in, it's stories like that. My daughter is so great, and my son is, how do I take care of this? And so as we look at these situations and what we're going to do, report. So many times we want to know so we can take care of it. And if we don't know anything about it, we can't take care of it. And sometimes people say, it happened in the hallway. I know there was a teacher standing there. In between all those passing times, we station all 50 or 60 teachers outside their doors for their position. When students do these things, it's usually not obvious that they just walk up and do it in front of a teacher or in front of a student. It says they turn their back to go into the classroom. That happens. Was there a teacher out there? Yes. Did they see it? Most of the time not. And if they do, we teach them to address it right away. So when we look at those things, don't just assume because somebody was there that they didn't see what happened. We encourage the kids to come and talk to us and tell us. And if they don't, we encourage them to tell you so you can come and let us know. We follow due process for all students. So as that comes in, the first time reported is the first time. Like I said, don't wait until something's happened 5 or 6 or 7 times where it's been going on for 2 or 3 weeks or a month. And that's typically a lot of those situations is you kind of deal with it, and then it's at that point where you've just had it, and you're ready to have something done. But the first time it's reported to us, within due process, we have to deal with it how we would any other situation, investigate, follow through, and see how that's going to go. And so sometimes it's hard to wait that long. Like they said, sometimes we preach, show patience, do this, do that. But if it's going on and it's something that's bothering you, try not to let it get to that point. Procedures, as we look and investigate claims, like Mrs. Gradeville just said, on both sides, Rarely have I had a situation where somebody comes in and says this happens, and as I go through the investigation, that was the only thing that happens. And typically there ends up, lots of times there's consequences for both sides, but there's usually a whole other side of the story. This big thing happened, but there was 2 or 3 or 4 things that led up to that event that got left out. And lots of times when the kids come home, they don't tell you what they think is going to get them in trouble. They want to tell you the part that happened to them. They want your attention. They want you to know about it. But they're probably a little scared to let you know that maybe they had something to do with it. Is that always the case? Not always the case. Sometimes it's a situation where, like Mrs. Gradville said, somebody bumps into the hallway. Maybe they did do it on purpose, but maybe it wasn't. Within every situation, we have a team that we all work together. Everybody that was introduced here today, as we look at things, who would we get involved? Mrs. Clark becomes involved. As we go and look, if I need help, Mrs. Nystrom has been involved. I refer to the counselors for help. I talk to Mr. Hanna and everybody on a daily basis to see, have you taught with this student? Have you worked with this student? Are there patterns that you've noticed? What should we look for as I come in and interview the kids to see if we can see that there's a pattern of things going on? We always reteach the expectations, give guidelines to follow, consequences depending on the situation, depending on what it was, depending on how many times as we report things. When students come in, we always have the process. Everything we do is documented. Everything, if a discipline referral comes to the office and it's something I write up, either I have a phone call to the parent or that documentation goes home and gets sent home that day. The secretary's printed off, I sign it off, and it goes out. Within Boone, it's usually there the next day. So it's not like a lot later that we find out about it. So when we go in, the first thing I do when somebody sends a referral to the office, I type that student's name in, and I look and see, have they been in trouble for something before? I can look and see through, as we record things through the classrooms and through the office, I can use PowerSchool and I can use our HEART database to look at those and see if there's been a report about something before, if this is a reoccurring behavior, and how we address those things. So consequences depended on the severity of it. Sometimes it might just be something as simple as somebody knocked books out of their hands. Sometimes it might be something as knocked books out of the hands and the other person turned around and just punched them right in the face. So consequences are going to vary. And then we always discuss future consequences if the behavior continues. So they know this is where we're at. This is what happened. This is what the expectation is. And if it continues, this is what the next step is going to be. So they're kind of prepared, and the parents are prepared for when that happens, that it's not a surprise if that happens again. Like I said, document the situations so everybody knows. If I document it, all the teachers can see it, all the other administrators can see it, so as the counselors are dealing with students and looking up those things, they can see those things as well. Next steps, as we go through there, and the severity of it, if those behaviors continue, when we really get to that higher level of what it is, typically there's not very many situations that get to that level. So when we investigate that, we've already set those next step consequences in behavior. We have a system where they fill out formal harassment papers. We go through, investigate the situation. Was it founded? Was it not founded? Is it bullying? Is it not bullying? Is it harassment? Is it not harassment? The hard thing to see is many hours are dedicated to each incident, and sometimes you don't see that side of that. Within the confidentiality of what we can do, that's the hard part that I've learned this year in dealing with. People want to know what is going on. What are you doing? What were the consequences? And we can't tell you. It's a confidentiality issue. When we go through there, I can assure you and thank you for letting us know, and that we are dealing with it. We've had situations where me and Mrs. Clark and Mrs. Gradville have gone through and interviewed 15, 20, 25 students within one class period to figure out something that happened. And as we look at those, it's not just as simple as let's pull all 20 kids out at the same time and see what's going on. Because as soon as you do that, all the other kids are like, oh my gosh, what happened? And then they're all talking about it. So sometimes that process takes a little while to play out as we do it for the best interest of all the kids involved and everybody else, so we're as discreet as possible. We can act on it as quickly as possible, but we want to get down to figure out what really happened so we can so we can do those things. What can you know, as we follow those laws, we can tell you what happens with your student, the consequences for your student, and it's hard to just have the hope that something is going on, but as we address those things, that's kind of what we want you guys to know tonight, that we are addressing those issues, that we want to know about those issues, we want the school to be a safe place, and we are spending lots of time dealing with those situations. And as I can attest to, being the first year in this position, you know, my position was created just for this, and so I spend all day long every day going through and working with these students and talking to these students and dealing with these situations and working with the counselors and the principals to make sure that everything is being taken care of. Again, just the information, can't tell you the discipline, can't tell you the types, can't tell you the length, can't tell you who's involved, but we will let you know if you have concerns. We always say when we address situations, how's that going to happen? One of the main things we address when people come forward and say, I want you to deal with this, but I really don't want you to because we think there's going to be repercussions as it comes back out and something might happen. That's one of the first things we deal with in every situation. And we give expectations for that and consequences for that. If this isn't when this conversation is done, this is between me and Mrs. Gradwell and this wall right here, and it doesn't go anywhere from there. And we talk about what happens if that would go on and move forward. And we try and take care of those issues because we know they're kids. And we know sometimes they go out and then they just go say, you're not going to believe what Mr. Kelly just told me. And then as they share that, you know, we try and keep that to a minimum. From the outside looking in, Officer Powers, his role, what does he see in the school? As a new person coming in, kind of as far as myself, I've been within the district for 14 years, so I've kind of been here and seen things. Just another resource that was added like myself, and he's going to kind of give his view as he steps in, what his role is, what he's seen, and how we've used him to help address some of these situations as well. So, Officer Powers.
I really want to thank you all for coming. It's one of those things where, you know, nobody really wants to go out in cold, especially on a day like this. This is a topic I think all of us are interested in. I'm sure if you've been watching the news, reading the newspapers, it's a hot topic right now. A little bit about me. I've been a police officer for 5 years, so I was able to do all the fun stuff, the chases and the fights and all the drunks and all that stuff. So I had the opportunity to come here to the schools. I was really excited. And one thing that you'll probably hear me mention more than once is this is a really positive thing. I think the first question that I got more than anything else is, are our schools so bad we need a police officer with an officer down the hall, roaming the hallways? Is it that bad? And my answer is absolutely not. That is not the reason I'm here. Because both the police department and the city, or the school district and the city, so we can work together to make it better. And that is by far our number one goal. Basically, what do? There's 3 main roles and responsibilities. One, obviously, first and foremost, I'm a police officer. So anything, any crime at all, any law enforcement situation whatsoever on school property or on school events is my responsibility. Usually the report comes to me either directly or if something would say would happen after hours, would happen on school property, involve students, that comes to me. All the follow-up investigation, anything like that is all mine. What I'm involved in, okay? And second, I would say this is kind of an informal thing. It's kind of just another adult that's kind of a mentor for kids to talk to. I've been amazed as I built rapport with the kids, just especially being here. They've gotten to know me. I don't know all of them by name. I wish I did. There's no way I could do that. But even just a 5-minute conversation in the hallway. I had one with the kid today. Awful home situation. He came to report something a few months ago, and you know, Mrs. Gradwell, since you and I had a conversation, say, how's so-and-so doing? And I could tell in the hallway, he's having a rough time. Came back and break a song today. How's it going? It's great. Officer Powers, my life is so much better because of whatever. 2 minutes. There's just little touches that I have with the kids. It's just another adult in the building for them to talk to, and that's just one of the roles that I play. There's a lot of things that these kids go through. I don't know. It wasn't until I came back here and I remember all the things that happen when you're this age. Physical changes, psychological changes, and a lot of that stuff has been discussed. So just another person for them to talk to, help them work through those things. Lastly is kind of a guest instructor in the classroom. And I have also enjoyed this. I'm not a teacher, I'll say that first and foremost. I'm mom was, but I'm not. And so I've learned a few things, but I've been able to come in the classroom and talk. Excuse me, a lot of things. I don't know how many of you have 8th graders, but if you do, they went to the Retreat at Camp Hanershaw this year. It was previously mentioned, and I spoke to every 8th grader about sexting. If you haven't heard about that, which I'm sure unless you live in Iraq, you know what I'm talking about. Now, if you ask your 8th grader if they remember anything I said, probably not, but that's 8th graders, right? But there's just an example of you able to step in and be involved and teach on something, just as a fresh face in the classroom. We've done some things on drugs. Next week, talking to all the 7th graders about criminal justice careers. There's a lot of things that they want to know. Of course, everyone wants to know, have you tased any kids today? Can you tase me? That's a whole other topic. But, just as I've got to know them, and that's part of being, in the definition of school resource officers, that word right in the middle. It's amazing how many questions I answer, not just from kids, but from staff and parents. And that's part of the reasons why I'm here. Some of the other reasons, it frees up patrol officers to go over respond to things on the street and not have to worry about, here's a good example. Say last year at this time, there's a situation in a classroom, student out of control, he punched the teacher, he's whatever. 911 gets called. If our average response time to most emergency calls in the city is 3 minutes or less. It's pretty good. Okay, 3 minutes, the officer arrives at the front door. You probably know this, all of our buildings are locked. Okay, so you can't just walk in. They have to wait to be buzzed in. They probably don't know what room they're going to. Okay, so they probably need to be escorted down there. They don't know who the student is. All that adds time. Okay, I'm either already in the building, either this building or the high school. I know all the buildings. I've been calling. I have a key to every room. I have an access card to this building. I know the students, and I know the parents, and I know the staff. All of a sudden, it's a much more efficient way of responding to a situation. That's part of it. As I mentioned before, I have a better understanding oftentimes of what's going on. Sometimes these kids, I know their parents, right? The first time a kid said, "You arrested my dad last month." How's your dad doing? Which, and, hey, that's the reality of the community we live in, right? And every police officer will tell you that. It's good to have a single contact with the school. All the secretaries have my cell phone number. They'll call me. They'll text me. This is going on. They know who to call. There's no confusion. No confusion. It's not perfect, but it is a good system. And so they know, hey, we got a question. Even if it's just something that maybe is law enforcement related, but they don't know in the police. It's like going on to the police department or calling. What's the number for dispatch? I don't have it here. Let's call Officer Power. Send an email. That's somewhere else so I can be available. I've been able to help both staff and students understand police tactics and procedures. I don't know how many times a kid asked me, or even a parent or staff, hey, I got pulled over this weekend. Cop did this. Why did he do that? It's not related to the school, but the fact that I'm here and he can answer a question, they're thinking, man, I didn't think about that until I saw you today. It's another reason I'm here. I work very closely with the principals, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Kelly, all the elementary principals, Mr. Vidal, high school, Mr. Packard, and that is a good, say it wrong. I even thought about that. I'll bet you all sorts of names. So if you haven't even been in, see, I don't even know them. Okay, never mind. I should probably stop talking now. I got word all this stuff. Coming up since 6. The guidance counselors, special ed staff, behavior disorder staff, our at-risk teachers, I talk to them every single day. We talk about the kids. Hey, what's going on, such and such? And I'll say, hey, so-and-so happened this weekend. I read it in the police report. So the police were called, this went on, so we can collaborate, on what's going on with these different kids. I think first and foremost, it's really a fun thing. That's the first thing I noticed the very first day. I don't know how many of you remember back, especially to grade school, what did you hear that told you it's time to go to class? Was it or an ugly old bell or something like that? Come in here to the school sometimes, especially middle school, and there's music playing. It could be anything from ZZ Top to the Indiana Jones theme to Justin Bieber. Talk later. It's a really, it contributes to a very fun environment. Kids here really are mostly happy. Well, it depends on the period, right? But that is a great atmosphere, and that's something when I first realized I was going here and I'm talking to people on the street, like, oh, you're going to middle school? Oh man, I'm glad they gave you a badge and a gun and a vest. I hope you make it to Christmas break. And really, I can tell you the reality could not be farther from that. That is just simply not the truth. What I found is middle school kids are just that, middle school kids. There's a lot of running, pushing. That's just, as we've talked about some of the developmental stages, that's just how they act. That's the reality of it. And people say, well, it's really crazy, it's out of control. It may look that way in the 3 minutes in between classes, but I guarantee it's actually not. It's very closely, quietly controlled riot, how would we say it? But it really is under control. We know where these kids are going. I myself, I try from here to be out in all passing periods just like the rest of the staff. Something they did, what school did last year, they conducted a social norms campaign, and they did a study, a survey, and they asked how many students, there were a lot of questions. One of the questions, how many of you, this is all the students, nearly 800, feel respected here? 85% said they feel very respected. I think it's a pretty high number. I mean, if you had 800 people in one workplace, 800 adults, how many would say, I feel respected by my peers, by my coworkers, by my bosses, the people who work for me? I would guess 85% would be something that any company would strive for. We strive for 100%. So that's just, there's a picture, and this is completely anonymous. There's no way we can know who these kids are when they answer these questions. To me, that's just another sign of what we're doing that's right here. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Okay? But we do strive to do things right. What things I do not do, and this is something, there's a lot of misnomers out there. If you hear this, hey, Officer Powers, I heard he hands out detentions, or suspensions, things like that. I am not involved in administrative actions unless there's a crime that is involved. Occasionally, with a bullying incident, harassment issue, could it be criminal? It's possible, but I'm not the first resort. They don't call me right away and say, hey, so-and-so, it's so-and-so the lunch line, we're going to bring you in. Unless the kid's hurt or it's a very obvious, it's a more serious thing, I'm not involved. And that's something that I think people may not realize is the case. They don't say, okay, Officer Powers got his taser, he's got it out now. If you don't quiet down, he's going to use it. Obviously, that's a joke, but that I'm not using the big stick, and that's something that it's kind of a misunderstanding sometimes with the school resource officer position. If you hear rumors, please come to us. The doors are open. Come visit the building, walk through, come see my office, talk to the administration. Really try, this is, your kids are here, this is a kid needing a place. We try to be open, and it's one of the reasons we have this. We want to bring you guys in, kind of open the doors and say, this is what's going on here, and let you see. And lastly, I think we all know that if you come in contact with a police officer, we know it's probably not the best day. We understand that. And that's one of the reasons I jumped at the opportunity to do this job, because I know we have limited, as police, limited opportunities to have a positive interaction with someone. Right? And that's just the reality of the situation. And the fact that there are hundreds of kids now, hopefully, their first image of a police officer is a good thing. Say, hey, we're not here out here to get you. We're here to help you. We're here to protect you. We're here to serve you. You can talk to us about anything. That's been a good thing. If a kid comes home with a little fake police badge, and then you know that they've been in my office that day. It's one of those things that it's having a positive touch with kids at a young age. Be able to get that positive interaction first before anything negative happens as they get older. That's something